I'm Heather, and I'm going to get right into the questions for the Module 4 discussion. Chapter 5, I will discuss how communication works within an organization, starting off with upward communication that occurs when it's more of a bottom up approach, and the information is relayed and transmitted up the chain from the lowest hierarchical members to the top level managers like the CEOs and presidents. That I found that on page 123, and you can learn a lot from this, finding out if previous things that you've implemented are working or not. You can get suggestions and make people feel like they have a voice, which is very important, as we have learned. Downward communication consists of messages that begin at the top of the organization's hierarchical levels, and the information's transferred down throughout the remaining lower ranks. I found that on page 120 actually, and I think of bureaucratic organizations personally. It's very nuanced, I know, but I feel like when I look at a top-down approach, it's what I think of. And some issues with it is that the information can get misconstrued if it's not communicated effectively, and misinformation can cause problems, confusion, and when you're dealing with things in a business setting, those problems can become very expensive. So it's important to be able to relay that. Lateral communication is when employees are communicating on an equal level. I kind of moved into dissent from that when I was doing my definitions of all of these. On page 128, it talks about lateral descent, and that's when you complain to your coworkers, call it venting, but I feel like it's a good kind of example of that lateral communication because you're communicating among your peers. Employee silence, with that, I think it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. A lot of it winds down to the willingness to give or to withhold information. And then it talked about the different types of silence. Acquiescent, I don't think I've ever said that out loud before, that word. Acquiescent silence is due to disengagement, people feeling like they can't make a difference within the organization. Defensive silence, you don't want to put your job at risk. I mean, I think of bosses that are scary when I think of that. Pro-social science, you don't want to seem like you're not being cooperative, and you don't want to rock the boat, I guess I would say. And I mean, I've been silent about things because I didn't really like my boss. I'm thinking of one in particular, and I knew he wouldn't do anything about whatever I told him, so I thought it was kind of pointless. So I think it was half acquiescent and then half of it was purposeful. I don't know. It probably wasn't with very good intention that I had, because I didn't really want to help him out with his job or anything, because he was kind of mean, honestly. So I think it's important to understand and dissect why employees are silent, because there's probably more to it than you think. And then communication networks, we'll get into that. And the book defines communication networks as the patterns of contact between communication partners that are created by transmitting and exchanging messages through time and space. Page 141. And formal communication, it's kind of the norms, rules, and guidelines that an organization establishes for the general communicative behaviors that are tolerated or accepted. And they dictate how communication will occur within the organization, or I guess not occur. I mean, I guess if you're not communicating, it's still a form of communication. Silence, you're still communicating. Non-verbally maybe, but it has, formal communication has more structure than informal communication. And the informal communication is going to exist outside of the general hierarchical structure. Information moves through the grapevine, and that can be kind of a lateral movement as well, up, down, many different ways. But the problem with informal communication is the propensity for information to be inaccurate. Grapevines are informal networks that move information quickly through the organizational network, It can help people feel like they belong within an organization, as it makes people feel like they're a part of the group because they're being included in passing along information. And that being said, the grapevines can help people build teamwork and camaraderie. And sometimes, I've said this before, that people gossip and talk, like when they're talking shop, because I think that they want to get to know other people in the group and feel like they belong. And also, it's kind of a mutual subject that they're both involved with. An example of grapevine communication is when we were switching ownership at my current job. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't communicated to everyone, and things were constantly changing. So between, my bosses telling a friend or customer, I don't know, an owner telling someone, chefs picking up on info that they might have heard from the hostess. I mean, things can get very scattered and very misconstrued, because I ended up hearing some things from customers that were completely inaccurate. And I'm like, I see how you could have picked up on that or understood that, but I also can see why your information is very wrong and skewed. I'll go to chapter 6, consider the workplace culture. I feel like I have a lot to say, so I'm just not even going to say the question, but I did number 1. The functional approach sees culture as something that an organization has. So in my workplace, it's a restaurant, and I said that feedback is rapid sometimes. It's busy. We need fast communication. We're very customer oriented. We also have value and a quality driven approach to things, as we're fine dining. So we take pride in great service, great food. High expectations are put upon us. But we also have a work hard, play hard kind of culture too. And I feel like it's kind of apparent. We all like to have fun. We all work hard, pull our weight, but we celebrate those small victories. And I think that our customers would notice that too. We're not managed under super strict rules, but we do serve liquor. So there are some strict guidelines that we do have to follow. The interpretive approach in that application, we have our logos everywhere, so there's lots of symbolism, so you can tell that we're kind of prideful, I suppose. You can see us laughing and joking among us as coworkers, so we seem friendly. We are family oriented. I think we seem that way. And then we're that way with our customers too, like our regulars. The critical approach, I'd say our power as employees is pretty distributed because we don't have managers. We have owners. The hostesses, I guess, would be at the bottom of the hierarchical structure, I guess. And then we have front of the house and we have back of the house. So we have the front of the house staff, like servers and bartenders, and back of the house staff. And those cultures do vary a little bit. I mean, we are intertwined, but they're kind of under different scheduling, and we don't really interact a lot. Like, we're definitely a different department in each. Postmodern approach, our workplace is ever changing because people go and leave, and it changes the vibe. It changes the culture a lot, but depending on, I guess, who's currently employed there in the season, if it's a busy season or not. So another thing about it ever changing, so one of my bosses, kind of his mood will change, and so sometimes I feel like our work environment is ran a little bit more kind of like unstable, I guess you would say. And then sometimes we have a lot more autonomy and more family, or like we're treated more like family, I guess. But I mean, I think that can be kind of bad too, because I think you take stuff out on your family sometimes. So, but we get over stuff really quickly and move on. And then it's just, sometimes we do have less independence, and then the environment is like less focus as a team, but focus on everybody at the same time. So if one person makes a mistake, we all kind of get in trouble a little bit. And then sometimes it's opposite, so everybody's doing good, and then someone will make a mistake and I feel like they kind of feel excluded, I guess you would say. Looking at all of these things, it's like the environment can become more bureaucratic and quite rapidly, I think. And I haven't really realized this until I looked at all the different approaches and kind of dissected my workplace in that way. Using Sheen's organizational culture model. So pages 152 through 162 through 165 is where I found the information, and I'm going to try to use the applications of each of these right. Basic assumptions. I think that we have a progressive way of being ran. We're allowed to speak our grievances. We have two bosses, so I think one's kind of more the good cop, one's bad cop, but either way, the line of communication is there to someone, that's a higher up that has decision-making power. Again, we're family-oriented, so we solve conflict personally with each other, but there's a fair amount of lateral gossip and communication too, but I think that's pretty normal in a restaurant, but our norms. I don't know if it's healthy or not, but it's just how it is. We all pull our own weight, we respect each other, and we help each other out. Espouse values. So I think that we preach family, and that's true, but because of that, we can communicate in an unprofessional way sometimes. I think sometimes we can get a little snappy sometimes if we're busy and stuff, but we get over it so quickly. It's pretty awesome, actually. And then I'd say we have an open door policy as far as speaking with management, but sometimes that isn't true. If our boss isn't in a good mood, we don't really want to bark up that tree. But behavior and artifacts, we have our logo printed in various places. Our dress code is all black. There's art on the walls. We have a Christmas party every year. We kind of give out little jokey awards and things like that, but we're appreciated and respected there. It's really awesome. But I guess one of the things that we kind of do that's imparted in our culture is we get shifters on busy nights when we do a good job. So I think we kind of expect that now, but it's kind of a appreciation thing, I guess. I'll move on to the case study. So on page 9, when it says, Howard was saying, how can we communicate the potential solution to the employees? How can we make the loan labor work for them? Will they trust us? I think that they had communication underload because the communication wasn't really there. So employees were startled and were confused and probably lacked trust in what was happening. Another one is on page 5 when they talked about how one of the employees was, talking badly about the situation, and he was like, what they should do is give us a bonus for sticking with this place. We don't get paid enough to begin with, and I related it to organizational dissent. I found the information for this on page 128, and it says because it involves complaining to coworkers and voicing criticism openly within organization. And then it says that this form of dissent is latent dissent because the term suggests that dissent readily exists but is not always observable, and that dissent becomes observable when certain conditions exist, like frustration. And then for chapter 6, the two things I want to relate, page 9 says how, Howard was like, how can we communicate the potential solution to employees? How can we make loan labor work for them? Will they trust us? And then he was like, there's no way to demonstrate respect for employees like empowering them to help solve the challenges they've raised. So I said that he could help solve that by using scope for supportiveness, credibility, openness, participatory decision-making, and emphasis on high-performing goals involving them. I found that information on page 156. So then on page 155, I equated this for supportive versus defensive communication, and it's because, the climate is created when individuals do not feel anxiety. Communicating with others, that's supportive. The defensive is on the other side of that, when the individuals feel anxiety in communicating with others. Page 155 is where it's from. But on page 8, when he was like, well, maybe we should forget the whole idea and lay off those 19 employees for 90 days, it'd be easier. And then he stopped and was like, well, maybe we should convince our reluctant employees or just order them to go to nonprofits and let them fall where they may. After all, they don't believe we have our best interests in heart. Maybe we're wasting our time. So I feel like he kind of went back and forth between the two. That's the end of my video. Thanks.